like as a practice or whatever. It's smaller, so.
Perfect. Yep. Mixed media works great. And like I told you last time, I paint on that often. So yeah, feel free.
Okay.
Let's see here. So this is just kind of a short little kind of overview for our class today. And then two, if you want to, don't feel like you have to, but if you want to snap pictures of what you guys do today and email them to me, feel free. Totally up to you. So as far as supplies go, we've kind of talked about this. I just put that I'm using the Canson XL and cold press watercolor paper, but like any surface for acrylic paint will work. You could do this on canvas. You could do this on a wood panel. You could, anything really will work for this. So your mixed media paper is awesome.
Okay.
So as far as colors go, really any colors you feel like using can be fine. I definitely think you'll want some white paint, especially with flowers, because you've got a lot of those lighter areas and those highlights of similar colors, which we'll talk about. So I'd say any color paint you have plus white, meaning you can mix from your primaries, or, you might see, ooh, that's a pretty magenta in that tube. I'm just going to use that. So whatever you'll want to do. I'm going to mainly be using round and flat paint brushes in a variety of sizes, but any kind of paint brushes will work. I'll just kind of talk about how I'm using the brush a little bit as I'm doing it. Paper towel, cup of water, palette, those staples. Palette knife is optional if you want to mix with one, to be honest with you, because we're painting kind of smaller. I'll probably just do most of my mixing with a brush today. I usually sometimes will save that mixing with a palette knife for larger areas. So resource images. So the process I'm going to be teaching you today is a process that you can apply for any kind of flower, any kind of style. I'm not going to necessarily, I don't want you to walk away from this only being able to paint the one type of flower we do today. You know what I mean? I want you to be able to take this skill set, look at any flower you might want to paint and be like, I know how to tackle this, or I know the process of how to break down the steps so I could paint this flower too. So we're really going to try to break it down, simplify it into basic steps that I think for both you and your daughter will work really well, and that I think going forward you could apply to future paintings. I do like resource images. I just pulled some different ones from unsplash.com. I definitely break down the resource image. I don't paint it exactly like I see it necessarily, which I'll talk to you about in just a minute. But I think painting from resources to begin with will help you stylize and help to paint from your imagination later. And the reason why is, have you two ever drawn one of those little suns in the corner of your paper with the sunbeams coming down? Have you ever done that?
Yes.
Yeah, me too, right? Is that what the sun actually looks like?
No.
No, it doesn't, right? But we've made a symbol for it. And anyone would recognize it as the sun, even though it doesn't actually look like that. And so I think the same is true with flowers. We see lots of little doodles and symbols of flowers, and those are awesome and cute and great, but I think it's good to know how to paint it a little bit more than that, so you can then break it down and simplify it as you want to, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Cool. So getting started, I do have some resource images we'll kind of use together today. So I'll break down how to draw them for you and kind of show you step by step how to do it. But this, going forward, if you pick your own resource image, I say choose a composition. Like if you look at the examples here, you see the sunflower really zoomed in and cropped versus a further away view. How do you want to paint it? Observation, just looking at it, if you look at that pink flower up at the top, it's all the same color pink. However, because the light is hitting it in different areas, we see it as light pink, medium pink, dark pink. So those are some of the key things we'll talk about. That's how we get those petals to look like they have dimension, and it's not just a bunch of shapes in pink. Okay.
Mhm.
So we'll talk about shape and form, value, lights and darks. I'd say those are kind of like the biggest components of painting a flower. We'll start with this basic sketch shape of the flower with pencil. And we've talked a little bit about washing, and so I'll explain that in process today. And you'll have kind of two options for washing. And I'd say, you know, for today, we'll probably just like do individual washes to each flower as we do them because we're just kind of practicing. But let's say you eventually wanted to do like a painting like on the right with a bunch of flowers and a background, then perhaps you might wash the entire page before you begin.
Okay.
Go into that twice. And just a couple things to consider. I will mention these things as we're working, but I always like to remind students that warm colors tend to come forward, come toward you, and cool colors tend to go back in space. Likewise, dark tends to go back and light tends to come forward. So this is kind of that important factor for even if we're not painting hyper realistic, if we want it to look like a flower, and again, not a blob of pink shapes, we need to factor in those components so we can see the dimension of the flower. We're going to really work up in layers. And building up those layers. And then, of course, little tiny details are last. Like this flower, if you look, you know, in the middle, we see all those little pieces coming out or all the lines and texture on the
Mhm.
petals. That's all last, the very last thing we do.
Okay.
Cool. So let's see. I came up with a new way to share my doc
Oh,
cam.
cool.
So, and actually, I am in Michigan right now visiting my parents.
Oh,
So I
wow.
kind of have like a different little setup
Cool.
here, but it's my travel setup. It's working. So I've got my paper here. I just went to unsplash.com. I just printed some photos. So looking at maybe these 3 photos, which one would you guys like to try painting? Do you like the style? And we can change colors. I'm
Which
just
one do
talking
you
about
like?
like shapes. Which one do you like?
Katie likes the one at the top, and I like the one to the right.
This one?
So
Okay. How about we tackle
whatever,
both then?
yeah,
We'll
whatever
kind of look at
majority
both.
rules is fine by me.
We'll start here because I think this one's a little bit easier, to be honest
Thank
with
you.
you. And then after we tackle this one, then we'll hop over here. Now, where
Okay.
are you? How do you guys feel about drawing? Do you enjoy drawing? Do you like simple sketching? Or would you feel like, I just prefer it to be on my paper, I want to start painting? Where do you fall in that?
I can't draw. Katie's very good at it, so I'm the
Okay.
totally beginner. So
Okay. So
she really has a good eye for that. So
okay. And I mean, drawing is definitely like, Lori, if you find that you really like painting flowers and you start drawing them more, you will get better at drawing them without a doubt. But I will show you a trick that you don't have to draw them at all. So I'm going to show you that first, just to show you for future. And then we will draw this one together and this one too. And I'll break them down into really simple steps for you so you can manage to draw it. But just showing you, if you have and I think we talked before, you do have a printer at home. So I'll use this one as an example. I just printed this. This is just on an inkjet printer. If I flip it over to the back and take just a regular pencil, and on the back, I shade it.
cool.
Basically what I'm doing is I'm making myself a custom piece of transfer paper. And whatever you want to trace or transfer, you'll need to put the pencil there. Okay, so like this. Okay, then you'll turn it back over. I like to grab a little piece of masking tape so it doesn't slide around on me. So just tape that down. And then I usually will use an ink pen just because of the pressure, but you could also use the pencil again. And then all you need to do is just trace those lines around the flower. You don't even need all the details, just the basic shape. And then when you peel this back, it's a little light because I didn't color, but you can see it'll start to transfer like that. So that's a little, you know, something you can do if you don't feel like freehand sketching.
Yeah, you had shown that the first class.
Yes. Yes,
Yep.
I mentioned that, but I don't know if I like actually showed it to you. So just,
Yeah.
you know, something I wanted to bring up again, just in case. But let's go ahead and take a look at this one.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, I don't know all the like correct names of flowers. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to start by just interpreting this as a little circle. So just on your paper, and I'm not going to draw this super big, but I'm going to just go ahead and draw a little circle. Right, so then we have this area of kind of like the darker magenta, right?
Right.
So then I might take this, and Katie, since you like drawing, I mean, feel free if you kind of want to sketch this out. I'll try to keep my hand out of the way, you know, feel free. I'm just trying to break it down and make it real simple too. So this you could even interpret by drawing another circle if you wanted for now.
Okay.
The sketch, when you're sketching for painting, it's less important, you know, that it looks exactly like the thing. It's more or less you're placing where your colors are going to go. So now we know there's 5 petals here. So we want to make sure we leave room for 5 petals. So, you know, you can just pick your starting one. I'll just start with this one because it's up at the top. And so I'm just going to kind of bring it out from this circle here because I know that's where it kind of comes up from. If you want to kind of draw it inward a little bit too. So I'm going to just draw where the 2 parts of those petals will come out. And you can see right now, it looks like a little alien creature, right? It doesn't even look like a flower. So, you know, it just kind of goes to show that drawing too is really building. You know, I always tell my students, it's kind of like building Legos. You have to start with one piece and you're building. It doesn't look like anything. And then all of a sudden you have something. So I'm just going to just bring this petal around. Now, this is where I'd say don't get too caught up in this being perfect because it's nature. It's not perfect, right? No petals look exactly the same. You're just kind of using this as inspiration. Actually, I'm going to move this around a little bit. Okay, so there's one petal. And if I want to make some adjustments, if I think, oh, you know, this could go out a little bit more to match this, I could make those changes. But I usually don't care too much because nobody's going to see this at the end. They're only going to see my painting, just information. So I'll go ahead and just kind of repeat that same process. And notice I'm just leaving like a little gap right here because the flowers also have that. And then I can always erase that later if I need to. But I'll just kind of go around and add the rest of these petals. And, you know, draw as slow as you need to. You feeling okay with it so far?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There's 3.
Looks good, Katie.
And, you know, eventually I think if you start painting more, you might find you don't need references. You know, it's a little bit of muscle memory when you start drawing. And you'll just kind of, especially a flower like this, which I feel like is fairly simple when you break down the shapes. It's a good one to just kind of have memorized a little bit. But now it looks a lot more like a flower, right? It doesn't look like the little alien guy anymore.
Mine still looks like an alien. Mine looks like an alien flower.
Well, that could be fun too, right? Maybe you're going to invent a new flower today. Yeah. I love it.
I don't know what the flower is called, but we see them on our walks. So.
Oh, really?
They are, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I thought we'll just keep it simple, okay? Because I remember you saying last time you were like, I just want to paint a flower, right? So we won't worry about backgrounds, nothing like that right now. We'll just worry about the flower itself. And yeah, I'm going to keep my flower pretty true to these colors. I'm not going to be so precise with it because I like to, you know, exercise my own creative freedom and not be limited by the photo. But I am going to keep the colors fairly true so I can reference the lights and darks. But feel free to paint your flower whatever color you want, follow along. You know, depending on what colors you have. I actually do have some magenta paints, some colors that I think would work good. I've got some white. I've got some different yellows.
White, yellow. Yeah. I think I put the white out there. Yeah, we have a big top. Yeah. White.
And I have a little green as well I'm going to be bringing in, and the green is going to be my wash color, and I'm choosing this kind of yellow green because magenta is the color of the flower. So I'm choosing green because it's a complementary color. So you could also choose green, or perhaps you want blue because you want it to have a cool background or tone, or perhaps you want it red because you just want to build up the warmth. So as far as that wash color, it doesn't matter. You could even take black and have a gray wash and keep it neutral. Okay, does not really matter that much, but I'm going to have mine be this kind of light green color.
Pretty. Good job.
Okay, so I'm going to, my palette's a little big for my space. I'm going to turn it this way, have an empty side. Okay, so like we can see colors too. So I'm going to take just a little teensy bit of this green, and like I said, feel free to wash your flower in any color you want. It could be purple just because you like purple. It could be orange because you feel like you're in an orange mood today. It does not matter. Again, it's setting a middle value for our paint to start building up on. It's going to make blending so much easier as well. So I just have a cup of water here, and then I just have like this little flat paintbrush. I'm just dipping it in the water, and I'm going to just pull some of this paint, and I'm not like dousing it with water, but I'm just bringing in enough water to make it kind of like, it's more transparent, almost like a watercolor consistency. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint this over top of my entire flower. Now, because we're not painting a background, I'm not just going like this, although normally if I painted a background, I would just wash this whole thing, okay? But we're not doing that today, so I'm just going to keep it in the petals themselves. So this will take just an extra, you know, couple minutes because I'm being a little bit more careful versus, you know, painting over the whole thing. And if you need to add more water in, you can pull some more water in. You know, for some people, when they've never painted with a wash before, they're kind of like, oh my goodness, I don't want this like bright green flower. But I think you're going to notice pretty quickly why the wash helps so much.
Yeah, I've never used a wash.
And most people don't know. They don't. Like if you go to like a canvassing cocktail, you won't wash a painting, a canvas. They don't do that there. I've been to those. They might have you paint like a background, but they won't have you, you know, set the tone of your canvas.
Yeah, I did that one time when you go to one of those wine and draw on wine things and
yes.
Okay.
So yeah, you can kind of, you know, play with it. And like I told you before, it's not like, you know, your art will be bad or wrong if you don't use a wash. It's just the traditional way to paint.
Is it okay if like it's, I guess it would be like natural looking because some petals are like darker than when you put the wash on?
Yes.
It doesn't have to be uniform with the consistency of the water and the paint. Okay.
Let it be organic. I know mine on the screen, it looks so bright, I feel like. But when I'm actually looking at it, I can see like over here, it dried darker than like right here. It just, I think with how screens are, it's just not picking up from my phone. But yeah, don't worry about those little inconsistencies. In fact, they can be kind of nice.
I think I drew my pencil too dark because it's not like.
Don't worry about that either. We'll cover
Okay.
it. My pencil's actually pretty dark too. I can still see a little bit of the circle that I drew. Don't worry about that. We will totally cover that up. Okay. So you can immediately start painting on top of a wet wash. You don't have to wait for it to dry, but acrylic paint does dry pretty quick. So usually as I'm getting my colors ready, I found that this has already started to dry. So the next thing we are going to do is something called blocking in. So blocking in is where, this is where you kind of have to train your eye to strip away details and look at just really what is it, light or a dark value, meaning this, I think we can all agree, is darker than this, right? So I tend to squint my eyes a little bit at it, and when I do that, I can right away pick out 3 values. I've got, this is kind of my darkest, I've got a middle kind of through here and all the petals, and then I've got a light. Now, if I get nitpicky, some of the middle comes up here, some of the light comes down here, sure, but we'll get to that later. So right now, we almost kind of want to paint it a little blurry, if you will. This is what I told you before. It almost looks like a 3rd grader maybe painted it, because I'm not worrying about details. I'm just worrying about, is it light or is it dark in that area? Okay. So I will be using, I do have 2 magentas here that I'm going to be using. If you don't have a magenta, another, you could also do red with like a little bit of yellow in it, and then a little touch of green.
That's all right. You can ask. We have a deep
any. Oh yeah, use deep magenta.
Yeah. I painted my flower blue on accident because I was going to do blue and yellow. So was I supposed to do yellow first?
No, nope, you're fine. That's totally fine. Yep. And like with colors, you don't have to worry about being so like precise and particular. And acrylic really lends to like layering and layering and layering. And sometimes I will purposefully, let's say, you know, I do want this magenta. I might purposely paint it with other colors first. Maybe I paint it like orange because I want some of those colors to pop underneath, if that makes sense. So as you start to get more comfortable with painting, feel free, take those liberations. Don't, like, art is meant to be creative and expressive, not limiting. So yeah, like do all those things, ask all those questions. That's awesome. I love it. I'm just keeping this fairly simple too with your mom in mind here, because when we talked last time, she, you know, you wanted something kind of step by step to show you how to do it.
Yeah, I'm totally beginner. I have a question for you. We have a deep magenta. We don't have that lighter color. I don't know what it is, but
do you have white?
Yeah, we have white, and I was thinking to do what you said, where we add a little bit of the color to the white. Is that what we did? Hold on, I gotta let the dog in again.
No worries. Yeah, that's all you would do is you would do the you could do your deep magenta, do 2 little bits of that, and then add a little bit of the deep magenta into some white, and that'll probably get you a little bit more like this. If you notice it just doesn't have the brightness, you could try bringing in a little orange or yellow into it just to brighten it back up. That sometimes helps.
Okay.
And then, so the other key components we'll need to know, I don't really need to bring black into this flower. There's just no need for black in here. If you look at this, yes, it's dark, and I think a lot of people would think, well, I'll mix black with my magenta to get that, but we don't need to do that. We can just actually mix a teensy tiny bit of green to our magenta, and we will get this nice color right here. Okay, so no black is needed. This is really all I need, plus a little green, and that's it. Unless you want to bring other colors into it, you totally can. But again, to keep it super simple, that is truly all you need. And as far as the green, like I've got some different greens. It doesn't really matter too much, to be honest with you. You could try all of them, but usually like a middle green is pretty good. And you could also mix your own green with your blue and yellow if you don't have a tube of green. But really, that's it. That's all we need for this. So the next thing I'm gonna do, I've just got like a little round, kind of a medium round paintbrush right here. I am going to start by kind of taking this darker area right here, and I'm going to block it in. So I'm going to take this initial, I'm just using my darker magenta straight from the tube, and I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of start putting it on here. So this is all I mean by blocking in. I'm just blocking in where that dark color will go. Now, if I look at this and think, you know, it's straight from the tube, I could potentially add like a little of my medium magenta to it, or maybe like a little touch of white to it, to just kind of play with that color a little bit. And like I said, if you want it brighter, like the actual flower, a little orange or yellow will do that for you. But for the sake of this, I'm not going to worry too much about my color being totally accurate. I'm more, you know, concerned with showing you the process. So I could start with something like that. Now I might bring this up into the petals just a little bit. Okay, because you can start to see it come up a little bit here, right? Yeah. So I might go ahead and just start to pull some of that up a little bit. And again, I'm not really worrying about the texture of the paint so much right now. I'm just wanting it to be where I'm going to place it.
Looks like a flower within a flower.
It does, totally. Yeah. And you know, this is where you can kind of have some creative freedom with it a little bit. You can, you know, bring this out a little bit more. You can play with it. This is where the reference is just a reference, okay? It's not like it has to be identical. So how you feeling with this so far?
Kindergarten with mine, but yours, I like this. I like the instructions.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And you know, disclaimer, I probably should have even started with is don't necessarily worry about your outcome today. You know, I wouldn't get too worried about if you like how your flower looks. I would take it more as you're understanding a process, and as you apply the process and practice more, you're gonna find yourself getting pretty good at them. So
yeah,
you know, just
I never I like the fact that you're teaching about the wash, well, the paper, the wash, the mixing of the colors, and the blocking. So you don't just go ahead and draw. There's step-by-step instructions. Definitely a guide for that. Okay.
Good. I'm glad. So now we can start to go into some of our lighter magenta. And again, you know, play around with whatever color you want to do. But I'm just going to pull some white to start with. Okay. And then I'm just going to start bringing in a little bit this magenta, and I'll get nice light value there. And you can play around with it. It's okay if this ends up being a little bit darker than the picture. Like I said, the picture's just kind of our starting point. And then from here, I'm just same thing. I'm gonna just kind of start painting that in where it goes. And now notice this is kind of that middle value I was talking about, right? As we notice it starts to go middle. So I can again, blocking it in. I'm not trying to make this look smooth right now. I'm just placing it where it's going.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of start painting this. And then I'll just kind of show you on this one petal, maybe I'm gonna add some more white in for this bottom part. And so here's kind of what a block in can look like when you're going from one tone to a next. And, you know, as you start painting more, you're just going to start seeing things differently, because all of a sudden you start looking at things in lights and darks constantly. And you think about, well, if I was going to paint that, how would I paint it? I'm always thinking about things like that. Like, how would I paint that? How would I break it down? And so when you start to see those values, those lights and those darks, that's very helpful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like I said, I could maybe try to mimic some more of this shape a little bit right now, how this darker is kind of going out into the lighter. That would be a good thing to kind of block in right now too. So maybe I'm going to grab a little bit more of that darker color. And then I'm just going to start kind of just blocking in that shape a little bit more. I'm not going to worry about it being super blended or super perfect yet, but just kind of blocking that in a little bit. And you can just let the paint sort of overlap. And if you, what I say, make a mistake, just paint over it, because acrylic paint, you can layer it. There's, I don't know who said this quote, actually I should probably look it up, but you know, I've heard before, uh-oh, I lost my screen. Can you hear me okay still? Here we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got it. We're here.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I was telling Katie that it doesn't look like it's blended, you know. It
Yes.
looks like that's
okay. There we go. So yes, it's not super blended yet. And for a block-in, don't worry about it looking blended yet, okay? That's, I think, where a lot of people get frustrated, because actually the best blends happen on top of a block-in. So what I'll keep doing is I'll do the same process for this whole thing. And when this flower is done, it's gonna kind of look like maybe a third grader painted it, okay? So, and I mentioned that to you before, because I'm not worrying about details. I'm not worrying about a ton of blending just yet. I'm just worrying about putting that color where it's going to go. So go ahead and just and so what I'm doing now is I'm hopping around a little bit, okay? So this is something I'll also do when I paint, just kind of my process is it makes sense to me if I've got this one color and it has to go here, 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 and here, I might as well hop around and put that color there. Because with acrylic paint, one thing we talked about with the techniques is wet acrylic paint will blend with wet acrylic paint, but if it's dry, it's no longer going to blend, okay? But right now, since I don't need to blend, it doesn't matter. So it makes sense to work like this. It's a little bit more efficient. But, you know, as you're getting comfortable with your painting, if you don't want to hop around right away, you don't have to. Okay, so there's kind of some of those middle values. Now I can hop in and I'm going to bring in the rest of those lighter values in there. Might need a little bit more white here. I feel like I use so much white paint. I just kind of use it sparingly, and I'm always needing to add more. Okay. And as you're working, if you have any questions or, you know, things you're thinking about, feel free to let me know.
How you doing, Kay?
Good.
All right. So I can start to kind of build this up again. I'm not worrying if it's blended so much right now. I just want the color where it's going. And then we'll take a look at one petal like in a lot of detail, and I'll show you how to blend it. Sometimes painting, blending is an illusion. We think it's blended, but it's actually just layered and it appears blended.
Gotcha.
So I'm just kind of playing around just with that shape a little bit. Stirring a block in. This is really that time for you to just kind of make sure everything's where you want it as far as the value goes and the color. But before I got kicked off too, what I was saying is an acrylic painting is never really finished, or it's never really bad, I should say. It's just, it's not done yet. And what I mean by that is you can just keep layering and layering and layering it until you get it how you want it.
Actually, from a distance.
See, from a distance too. Actually, you brought up a beautiful point I want to make a minute. When you are making artwork, your face is down in it looking at it, right? And we see it different than someone else looking at our artwork sees it. So take a step back from it. That is so important. Do that often. You will be amazed.
Yeah, you know what? About 2 miles away from me, it looks pretty good.
There you go. And you're only blocking in. We haven't even gotten the details yet. You're rocking it. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. And, you know, as far as like realism or how realistic something looks, that really comes down to how much information you're putting from here to here. The more accurate information that you mimic from here to here, it's going to look more realistic. But, you know, we don't necessarily paint to make it look like a photo. We paint, to be expressive. So, you know, just take your own liberties with that. I think, you know, a lot of people assume if it's realistic, it's good, or, you know, but that's not always true. And so I'd say just have fun with it as far as style. And, but, you know, if, with that being said, if realism is your goal, we can totally work on that.
At this point, it's all perception.
I love it. See, you got the right attitude.
You know? Plus, it's very relaxing to do this.
There you go. That's what it comes down to.
It's my lunch break from work, so it's perfect timing. Your 10 a.m. Mountain Time is perfect for my time because it's during my lunch break from work. Yeah.
Oh, good. Are you in Eastern time right now, or Central?
Yes.
Eastern. Okay.
Yeah, we're on the west coast of Florida, but we're still Eastern.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah, so I'm on the same time zone as you right now, being in Michigan.
You're Eastern?
I'm Eastern in Michigan right now, yeah. But I still schedule my classes on Mountain Time because Element3 Health is also based in Colorado. So they just operate on Mountain Time anyway. So I just know in my head, I always do the math for the 2 hours because my parents, you know, when I call them or. All right, so there's my block in, okay? And it's blocky, right? Like if you look, you can see it's not blended. There's little segments here, all of that. Okay, so now we can get into the blending portion. Actually, before we get to the blending portion, I did forget one little thing. I was thinking of it as I was painting. We forgot the little middle guy.
Okay.
It's yellowy. I would say there is a teensy bit of green in the middle though. I'd say green, it's almost that lightish green in the middle with like a little yellow kind of around it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
So because I have a little bit of this green actually left, I'm just gonna go ahead and block that in green. And then when I add my detail, I will do the other one. So I'm wondering too, based on our time, since we might actually not get to the other flower Katie wants to do before we finish this one. Here's my question to you. Would you like me to host another one and we'll do Katie's flower, or would you like me to record it and post it on the blog for her? Because I think other people would find it beneficial too. So I would be happy to host a painting flowers class 2.0, 3.0. We can do as many as you want.
See, well, Katie is cool with you if you record it, only because she has a job at a supermarket, and tomorrow she'll be gone all day. So if it's recorded, she can do it on her downtime.
That's what I'll do. I'll record it and post it, and then you'll have access to it, and she can watch it, and I'll break it down the steps so she can speed me up or slow me down, whatever she needs to do.
Okay. You should show her. Yours looks really pretty, hon. Thanks.
I know. I would love to see. Feel free to, if you want to pop up your video.
How do I? I do this,
so you can hold it
and then
on.
you switch it, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know if I switched it right.
Oh, it looks beautiful.
Oh, I didn't know you could see it. I can't even see what I'm doing.
It.
Oh,
I love the blue.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. You did great.
Oh, look, Coach, look at mine. She can't see. Oh, she can't see. Okay, hold on.
It went away again.
Look at this third grader here.
I don't know if I flip it.
There it goes. Yeah. You are doing so good.
Oh, please.
Seriously.
Well, really, here, I'm trying. You know,
I can't even see what I'm filming.
Oh, that's okay.
But it looks like a flower. So that's good. All right, so let's you want to take a look at a little bit of blending a minute?
Sure. Is that okay?
We'll go ahead and I'm going to zoom up. I wonder if I can kind of zoom. There we go. Okay, so you can see my Blackie painting.
Are you also recording this to post?
Yes, although so it records everything automatically, although with it kicking me off and me getting back on, I'm not sure what happened with that. So, but otherwise normally, yes, I just have to double check. But yeah, I like to re-record everything.
Okay, so I can go back on your YouTube site and then just pull this up?
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yes.
So I can practice. Okay.
Yes, exactly. All right, so let's take a closer look at this. I'm really just gonna try to focus on one petal, really. So maybe we won't finish this whole flower, but that's okay. You know, what we do here, you just rinse and repeat, right? Over the whole thing. So I'm going to just kind of try to put this close so we can see it. So now what I do, you know, and I want to make sure I've got all my colors. I know you can't see my palette anymore, but that's okay. I've got all my colors, my white, my kind of medium, and my dark. I've got all my same colors I use to block this in. Okay, so now I like to use flat paint brushes, but you can use whatever paintbrush you want here. Now I kind of am going to be layering again on top of here. But this time, and you don't need a ton of paint for this because you already have so much paint built on here. But now what I can do is I can start blending. So if I take wet paint into wet paint, it will blend. So if I just kind of start layering this paint on top, and I might have to clean my brush out between colors as I'm going lighter, okay? So I am cleaning out my paintbrush and dabbing it on paper towel, so my bristles are now clean as I grab that lighter color. Because if you don't clean your brushes or use different brushes, you're going to end up with that blob that looks all the same.
Gotcha.
Okay, so as I now have some lighter color, and as I put that up to the darker color, see how it creates a line?
Right.
I can now take, for example, I could take another brush or just clean my other one off. I often like to use two brushes so I don't have to clean a brush so much. But if I take this now and just gently pull these two colors into each other, they will blend. Okay, I talked for a minute and it dried on me. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some more color in there a minute. I mean, and acrylic paint just dries so fast. So it's one of those things, it's one of, I think, the thing my students have the most frustration over is how fast acrylic paint dries. So I did mention you can get some medium to slow the drying time down. Okay, so then I've got my lighter color, I've got my darker color. I'm gonna pull that back up here again. Okay, and then grab my brush. Now there we go. There's my blend I wanted. Okay, so I can just kind of gently pull these colors into one another to create a transition. Now, as I start to get down here, I can start to pull in those lighter colors. And same idea, as I paint them over top of each other and bring my brush back and forth, and you can try different, you can move your brush in different directions. This is called cross hatching. This is kind of how you get texture in there. So I can just move my brush in different directions. I am going to start to bring that paint into the other color and it creates a blend. Okay, so doing this, you want to work each petal individually. Okay, that's why when we block in, we kind of do it quick because it gets paint over everything for us. But then when we slow down and start adding details, we don't need as much paint and it's going to blend a lot better for us. But then we want to work kind of in little sections. You can also just kind of keep layering those colors. I need some more white again. It always happens to me. Like I said, I run out of my white to get some of those lighter tones. Okay, but that's really where you can start to kind of play around with those blends. And you know, you can ask yourself, do I like to see texture or do I want it really soft and smooth? Okay, like this is getting softer than over here, but it could be played around with more. It's just the more you work it, the more blended it'll be. The other thing I want to point out is, like, if you look at this flower petal, there's a lot of almost like little texture or little lines, right? Of different colors. So that's what I'm talking about. Those are like the final details, the final stages, the last thing you do. So let's say I liked how this looked. It's a little, you know, it's a little expressive, but I tend to paint that way anyway. It's just my style. I like seeing texture. I like seeing brush strokes, all of that. So if I kept this like this, I could clean this paintbrush off, or perhaps I want to grab something like this, like a little liner brush, and I can start adding little texture details on top of this blend now. Okay, so this is where I'm working with all those little skinny tiny brushes. This is actually like my favorite part of a painting because I love seeing details bring it together. But this is where you would then take, like, I'm just gonna grab a little dark magenta on this brush, put a little water on it. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I've got it kind of loaded up with some paint like this. And now when I see some of these like streaky little lines, you know, maybe I'm playing this up a little bit more, but sometimes that's fun. I could kind of bring in some like little line work on here now. Okay, or maybe that's too much contrast and I don't like how bold that looks. So I could, it's drying on me. Here's a little bit of that lighter magenta. So I'll just kind of show you this next to it. And, you know, mine can be more of like a experimental. We'll try some different things, see what we like on it. But I can, you know, kind of pull some of these little lines down. You know, maybe I'm going to kind of tap my brush like this to create some of those little bumps of texture, but some of those little imperfections or little details on the leaf, this is what makes it tend to look more realistic than just, you know, the blobs of color. So those are kind of some helpful things as you're building it up. And that would be the same thing with like the middle here too. You know, as I look at this picture and kind of look at this detail here, like I talked about before, it looks a little bit more like this is lighter green in the middle and kind of a little bit of yellow on the outside. And then I see lots of little texture. I might take my brush and just kind of tap some color in there. Now, really, I know we don't have a ton of time left. So one thing I want to mention that I think is another important thing, I talked about how I wouldn't use any black here. But your dark magenta or your deep magenta is only so dark. So if you need to make it darker without black, I mentioned you mix the complement in. So in order to get some of this little texture in here, what I would do, kind of one of my last things, if I was to that point, I know my flower's not done, but I would take some of this deep magenta here and mix just a teensy bit of like this green in with it. So if I took like here's this magenta, and I'm talking like a little smidge. I'll start with like that. Okay, ooh, yeah, that's pretty nice already. So now I've got a little bit of a darker magenta. If that's not dark enough, take a little bit more green. Okay, but what this is going to do is it's going to keep that magenta for me, but it's going to lower the intensity of it and darken it, which will give me this nice kind of dark color right here. So then I can, you know, start to maybe texture and build this in. This is a good example of illusion of blending. I actually don't need to blend it. I just need to tap some texture on, and it's going to create this texture that I'm seeing here. So that's what I mean is sometimes you're not actually blending. It's just you see a finished painting and assumed they blended, but they actually just layered paint. I could just kind of tap that around and, you know, just kind of keep building it up. Perhaps I want to kind of bring some over here. But yeah, that's the fun part is you can just keep working the flower until you get to a point where you're like, I like it. It looks done. It looks good to me.
Yeah.
And for you, that might be you need to set it back on your kitchen counter and take a few steps back and look at it for a few minutes. Or sometimes when I've been working on something so long, I'm like, I've just been looking at it too long. I can't tell if it's done or not. I'll put it away for an hour or two and come back and look at it, and then I'll decide how I feel about it, you know? So it's kind of some of those types of things. But I think flowers are a great way to learn how to paint. They're fun. There's so many of them. They're a great way to learn how to observe, to mix colors. So yeah. And while we have just a few minutes left too, I just wanted to answer any questions you have. Like I said, I'm gonna put together a nice little concise tutorial on the steps of the flowers, and I'll show you a full finished painting too at the end of all that, so you can see a finished product. And sometimes I'll show you what I do too. Like this is just a page in my sketchbook, a different sketchbook, but I'll just sketch a bunch of different flowers, right? And so here's actually the one Katie liked. It's a little light, but like I just will do a wash over all of it. But I'll just kind of practice sketching sometimes, and then I might come back to this a different day and play around in here a little bit more with it. So it's kind of something you can come back to and keep adding on to. It doesn't always have to be like a finished product right away, you know?
That's really good, Katie.
Thank you.
Yay, you got a little artist. That's so awesome.
She really is good. She has a lot of patience. And she does draw at night. Well, you know, my petals got undefined. Mine's an abstract.
So
I'm gonna do this again. Yeah.
cool. When you say undefined, do you feel like you got like color in some of these spaces perhaps?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's say that happens to you. I just want to, I mean, keep practicing for sure, but let's say that happens and you want to keep going with it. A good solution would be grab some of your greens and start filling in some leaves in the background. Because if you look at these leaves, none of them are defined, right? They're just kind of different shapes of different greens.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
what you could do is take like a nice little round, let me find, my brushes are all over the place. Like, I don't know, maybe like this guy, and get some green and just kind of fill in those spaces. If you're uncomfortable doing it with just a straight paintbrush, you could also take a pencil and redraw your lines and then paint, you know, depending on your comfort level. But that's just a way to troubleshoot or fix something. You know, Bob Ross would say those happy accidents. But I think one of the things about being an artist, right, is if that happens, what could you do with it? What would be a solution? So for me, if I was doing something and I lost my edges, that's probably what I would do. I would define it again with a background.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're right.
Cool. What other questions do you have? Is there any other kind of guidance I could send you off with as you try this on your own?
None for me. I'm gonna wait for your tutorial and I'm gonna try it again.
I'm glad.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions, Kate?
No, I'm good.